Before you go anywhere, slow down for a second. You didn't click this because you were curious. You clicked because something in you hasn't felt settled lately. You've tried to distract yourself. You've tried to rest. You've even tried to pray it away. But the feeling keeps coming back. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet discomfort you can't explain. You wake up with it. You carry it through the day. And at night, when everything is finally quiet, it's still there. Part of you wonders if you're doing something wrong. Part of you worries you're losing peace. And part of you doesn't want to admit how different everything feels now. But listen carefully. What if this isn't confusion? What if this isn't anxiety? What if the reason you can't go back to feeling normal is because God won't let you stay where you were? I know, that thought is uncomfortable, because it means the problem isn't just circumstances. It means something deeper is shifting. You've asked God for direction. You've asked Him to guide your life. But no one tells you what it feels like when that answer actually begins. It doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like restlessness. And if this moment feels strangely personal to you, that's not an accident. So before you scroll away, just consider one question. What if the discomfort you're trying to escape is actually the way God is getting your attention? You didn't come here by accident. Before anything else, be still for a moment, because what I'm about to say isn't loud, yet it carries weight. I am not speaking to the version of you others see, not the one that smiles, responds, and keeps moving. I am speaking to the quiet part of you, the one that notices something has felt different lately. You've tried to explain it away. You called it stress, routine, just another season. But you know that isn't the whole truth. There have been moments when everything around you looked normal, yet inside, something felt unsettled. Not broken, not chaotic, just unfamiliar. You kept telling yourself it would pass, yet the feeling stayed. And because it stayed, you began distracting yourself from it, filling silence, avoiding stillness, keeping your thoughts busy enough so you wouldn't have to ask why. But listen carefully. Distance from me rarely begins with rejection. It begins with delay, small postponements, quiet compromises, moments you sensed a nudge and chose later instead of now. You didn't intend to walk away. You simply kept walking without noticing where the path was leading. And over time, comfort slowly replaced attention. You still believe. You still pray sometimes. But you stopped expecting me to interrupt you. So when I did, you called it restlessness. That unsettled feeling you keep trying to calm isn't meant to disappear yet, because it isn't punishment. It is awareness. I'm not accusing you. I'm inviting you to notice. You've been asking for clarity, while avoiding the quiet where clarity exists. You've been asking for peace, while holding tightly to what keeps you distracted. And now you feel caught between staying the same and not knowing how to change. Stay here for a moment. Before you decide what this means, ask yourself honestly, why did this moment make you pause when so many others didn't? You're still here. That matters more than you realize, because most people move past moments like this quickly, not because they don't feel anything, but because they don't want to stay long enough to understand what they feel. Yet you stayed. And staying is where honesty begins. You've been wondering why certain things no longer satisfy you the way they once did. Why distractions that used to quiet your mind now feel temporary, almost empty afterward. You thought you were losing motivation, but you're not losing interest. You're losing attachment to what no longer fits. I have not taken joy away from you. I have changed what brings it. What once felt comfortable now feels shallow. What once held your attention now feels loud. And that difference unsettles you, because you cannot return to who you were. Yet you don't fully see who you're becoming. So you call it confusion. But confusion is only the surface. Beneath it is awareness. You've been sensing small moments more deeply, pauses that feel meaningful, thoughts that linger longer than usual. You try to brush them aside, yet they return quietly, not forcing you, not frightening you, simply waiting. You asked me for direction once, perhaps more than once, And direction rarely begins with clear answers. It begins with a shift inside you, one that makes old paths feel unfamiliar. You are not being pushed away from your life. You are being pulled toward alignment. That is why peace hasn't fully settled yet. Because peace does not come from staying comfortable. It comes from walking honestly. So stay present a little longer. Instead of asking how to stop this feeling, ask where it is pointing you. You may have noticed, this feeling does not rush you. It doesn't demand quick decisions. It doesn't overwhelm you with answers. It simply remains, steady and patient. That's because I am not trying to pressure you. I am drawing your attention. You spend a long time reacting to what is urgent, what is expected, what feels necessary to keep life moving smoothly. And without realizing it, you began measuring peace by how little was disturbed. But peace was never meant to be the absence of interruption. Sometimes peace begins the moment you stop avoiding what asks for honesty. There are thoughts you've quietly set aside, questions you postponed because they felt inconvenient, small recognitions you dismissed because they didn't fit your plans. You told yourself, later when you have more energy, later when life slows down, later when you feel ready to respond. Yet, later kept moving. And each time, the nudge returned. Not louder, but clearer. You are not being asked to solve everything right now. You are being asked to notice what you already know. The places where your attention drifts. The moments where your heart feels divided. The subtle tension between what you sense and what you continue. This is not failure. It is awareness reaching the surface. I am not showing you this to unsettle you. I am showing you because you are ready to see it. So instead of pushing the feeling away, stay with it. Let it reveal what you've been postponing to understand. Now the moment becomes more personal, because awareness always leads to a choice. Not a dramatic one, not a public one, a quiet decision inside you. You've begun to notice how easily you keep moving just to avoid pausing long enough to listen. How quickly you reach for noise when silence starts to feel meaningful. It isn't weakness, it's familiarity. You've grown used to managing life in a way that keeps everything predictable, and what is predictable feels safe. But safety is not always the same as peace. There are parts of your life you already sense need attention, not because they are wrong in appearance, but because they no longer agree with what you feel inside. You don't need anyone else to point them out. You recognize them before this moment. You simply hoped the feeling would fade, yet it didn't. Because I am not trying to expose you. I am inviting you to be honest with yourself. Honesty does not begin with changing everything. It begins with admitting what you already see. You don't have to fix it tonight. You don't have to understand every step ahead. But you cannot pretend you don't notice anymore. So stay here, without rushing away from the discomfort. Ask yourself quietly, what have you been avoiding acknowledging, even though you already understand it? This is where many people turn away, not because they don't believe, but because they realize belief alone doesn't keep life unchanged. You felt that tension, the sense that something gentle is asking more honesty from you than you plan to give. You're not being asked to become someone else overnight. You're being asked to stop pretending certain things don't matter. There are habits you continue, even while knowing they leave you empty afterward. Conversations you avoid because they might shift direction. Moments you fill with noise, so you don't have to sit with what rises in silence. None of this made you distant all at once. It happened slowly, comfortably, almost unnoticed. You told yourself you would come back to it later. You told yourself you needed the right time. But the right time rarely announces itself loudly. It arrives quietly, like this. I am not removing your freedom. I am reminding you that your attention shapes your path. What you repeatedly ignore begins to fade. What you repeatedly notice begins to guide you. So the restlessness you feel is not here to accuse you. It is here to keep something important from disappearing. Stay present with it, and instead of asking how to silence it, ask what it has been protecting you from forgetting. Now you begin to sense the difference. This feeling isn't pushing you away from life. It's pulling you closer to truth. You've been carrying more than you needed to carry. Expectations, patterns, responses you learned just to keep everything stable. They worked for a while. They helped you move forward when you didn't know what else to do. But what once protected you can quietly start guiding you, even after you've outgrown it. That is why the restlessness feels gentle, not chaotic. It isn't tearing things apart. It's loosening what no longer fits. You may notice certain thoughts returning more often. Not louder, just clearer. Moments where you pause longer than usual. Decisions that feel heavier than they once did. You're not becoming uncertain. You're becoming aware. And awareness changes how you walk. You don't react as quickly. You notice what you overlooked before. You sense meaning in places that once felt ordinary. This isn't confusion. It's attention waking up. So don't rush to quiet it. Let it show you where your direction has been drifting, and where your heart has been trying to return. You may also notice something else. The more you acknowledge this feeling, the calmer it becomes. Not because it disappears, but because you stop resisting it. For a long time you tried to solve it quickly. You searched for the exact answer that would settle everything at once. But some clarity doesn't come as a solution. It comes as a steady understanding. You are not being asked to rush forward. You are being invited to walk honestly. There is a difference between moving fast and moving true. You've spent years learning how to keep life organized around what felt necessary. Responsibilities, expectations, routines. And none of that was wrong. Yet somewhere within it, a quieter awareness kept waiting, patient and unchanged. It waited for you to notice how certain choices left you heavier, how certain moments left you lighter. Not every sign appears dramatic. Sometimes direction is revealed through small contrasts, repeated gently until you recognize the pattern. You don't have to fear this process. Nothing meaningful is being taken from you. Only what no longer belongs is losing its hold. So stay with the calm that comes when you stop arguing with what you already sense. Let that calm teach you where truth has been waiting all along. At this point, you might wonder why this has taken so long. Why the change didn't arrive suddenly. Why understanding came slowly. Because lasting direction rarely comes as a single moment. It unfolds as recognition. You were given time to notice, time to compare what brings life and what quietly drains it. If everything shifted at once, you might follow from pressure. But step by step, you begin to follow from understanding. You are not being rushed. You are being prepared to see clearly enough that your choice becomes your own. Notice how certain reactions feel different now. Situations you once accepted automatically now cause you to pause, not out of fear, but awareness. You're learning to listen before responding, to notice before deciding. And in that space, direction begins forming naturally. This is how guidance often works, quietly shaping perception until the path ahead becomes recognizable. So instead of asking when everything will change, pay attention to how you have already begun to change. The path is not appearing in front of you all at once. It is appearing within you, one realization at a time. Now you begin to understand why the feeling kept returning. It was not trying to interrupt your life. It was trying to keep you present inside it. You've lived through many days on habit alone, moving from one responsibility to the next without needing to reflect deeply. And for a while, that was enough. But growth doesn't always begin with adding something new. Sometimes it begins when what is familiar no longer satisfies you. That moment can feel uncomfortable because you cannot fully go back, yet you haven't clearly stepped forward. So you stand between what once worked and what now asks for attention. This space is not a mistake. It is a transition. You may feel less certain than before, but you are more aware than before. And awareness often feels heavier at first, until you learn how to carry it gently. You don't have to decide everything tonight. Just allow yourself to remain present without escaping the quiet. Because the more honestly you stay here, the more naturally the next step will become visible. Not forced, not dramatic, simply clear when you're ready to see it. And here is where patience begins to matter. You've been used to solving things quickly, finding answers, making plans, restoring certainty as soon as possible. But some understanding forms only when you stop trying to force it. You are learning to sit with what you feel, without immediately correcting it. At first that feels unfamiliar. Yet in that stillness, you notice more. You notice how your thoughts slow down, how your reactions soften, how your attention moves toward what is real instead of what is urgent. Nothing dramatic is happening outside you, but inside, something is settling into place. This is not confusion staying. This is clarity arriving quietly. You are beginning to trust that direction can appear without pressure, that change can begin without noise. So instead of searching for certainty all at once, stay with the small recognitions you already have. They are leading you gently, one honest step at a time. You may notice that your thoughts feel quieter now, not empty, just less crowded. The urgency to resolve everything immediately begins to soften, and in its place comes a simple awareness that you don't have to hurry understanding. For a long time you believed clarity meant having every answer before you moved forward. But often clarity is simply knowing what no longer feels true. You don't need to map the entire path tonight. You only need to acknowledge the step already visible. There are areas where you've been waiting for certainty before responding. Yet certainty often follows willingness, not the other way around. As you allow this realization to settle, something inside you relaxes. You're not trying to force a change anymore. You're letting recognition guide you. And recognition is quieter than decision, but steadier. So remain here for a moment. Notice what feels honest when you stop planning, and simply listen. Now the quiet feels different, not uncertain, but open. You're beginning to see that understanding does not always arrive as a clear instruction. Sometimes, it arrives as a gentle readiness to respond when the moment comes. The restlessness that once pushed your thoughts in every direction now feels more focused, almost guiding your attention instead of scattering it. You're not searching as urgently as before. You're noticing more carefully. There is a difference. Instead of asking, "What should I do with my whole life?" you're starting to ask, "What is the honest step right in front of me?" And that question is enough for now, because direction rarely unfolds all at once. It unfolds as you walk. So allow yourself to remain here, attentive, calm, and willing to recognize what becomes clear without forcing it. The path doesn't need to be loud to be real. It only needs to be seen, one step at a time. You might notice now, the tension isn't as sharp as before. It hasn't vanished completely, but it no longer feels confusing. Because once you accept that something is changing, you stop fighting to keep everything the same. For a while, you tried to restore the old sense of certainty, to return to the familiar pace where you didn't have to question your direction. Yet growth often begins the moment you allow yourself to walk without having every answer secured. You're not being asked to leap forward. You're being asked to stay attentive. There is a quiet confidence forming inside you, not loud enough to call certainty, but steady enough to move with. You recognize that some clarity only appears after you take a step, not before it. So instead of waiting for complete assurance, you begin to trust small recognitions. A conversation you know needs honesty. A choice that feels lighter when it aligns with what you've noticed. A moment where you pause instead of reacting automatically. These are not dramatic changes. They are real ones. Stay with them, and let the direction become clearer through living it, not predicting it. As you continue, something gentle becomes clearer. You don't need to force certainty to move forward. There was a time you waited until every possibility felt safe before choosing. Yet now you sense that waiting for perfect assurance kept you standing still longer than necessary. You're learning that guidance often feels simple, not complicated. It shows up in the quiet preference for honesty over avoidance, in choosing what feels true even when it requires patience. You notice how small decisions begin to align together, not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency brings calm. You're no longer trying to control the outcome before you act. You're allowing action to reveal the outcome. That shift changes how you carry the unknown. Instead of fearing it, you walk with it. Remain here, attentive to what feels steady rather than what feels urgent. Because steadiness is often how direction confirms itself. And now you may notice something quieter. You are no longer trying to escape the feeling. At first you wanted it to end, to return to the ease of not thinking about it. But instead of fading, it slowly changed. It became less like pressure and more like guidance. You began recognizing moments where responding honestly brought a subtle relief. Not excitement, not certainty, just a calm sense that you moved in the right direction. That calm matters, because peace rarely arrives all at once. It gathers through repeated trust in small, clear steps. You don't have to understand everything ahead to continue. You only need to keep noticing what aligns with what you already see. So remain patient with yourself. Let clarity grow naturally, and allow the path to reveal itself as you walk it. Now you may recognize a gentle shift. The question is no longer, how do I get rid of this feeling? It has become, what is it teaching me to notice? That change brings a quiet steadiness. You're not trying to solve your life all at once anymore. You're allowing each moment to show what it carries. Some answers appear in simple choices, speaking honestly, pausing before reacting, letting silence remain instead of filling it. They seem small, yet they reshape how you move through your day. You discover that guidance doesn't always arrive as a clear command. Often it arrives as a growing clarity about what feels true. And when you follow that clarity, even gently, the restlessness softens. Not because everything is decided, but because you are no longer resisting what you already sense. Stay with that steadiness. It will continue to show you where to place your next step. You may notice that your pace has changed. You are not rushing to resolve everything anymore. You move a little slower, but with more awareness. What once felt urgent now feels optional. What once felt small now feels meaningful. This is how direction often becomes visible. Not through sudden certainty, but through steady attention. You begin to trust the quiet signals you once ignored. The gentle sense to pause, to speak, to wait. And each time you follow one of those moments, even in a small way, the path feels less uncertain. You're discovering that confidence does not come from predicting the future. It comes from recognizing truth in the present. So remain attentive to what keeps returning gently. Repetition is often how guidance stays clear, until you no longer need to question whether you heard it. By now, you can sense the difference more clearly. What once felt like pressure now feels like direction. You're not carrying the same inner tension you had at the beginning, not because every answer appeared, but because you stopped trying to outrun the question. There is a quiet trust forming. You notice that when you follow what feels honest, even in small ways, the day feels lighter, and when you ignore it, the weight quietly returns. This isn't coincidence. It's awareness teaching you how alignment feels. You don't need dramatic signs to guide you. Often the clearest guidance is the gentle steadiness that remains after you respond sincerely. So stay with what leaves you settled rather than scattered. Let that steadiness become familiar. Because the more familiar it becomes, the easier the next step will be to recognize. You may find yourself looking back a little now, not with regret, but with understanding. Moments that once felt confusing begin to make sense. You can see how certain pauses protected you, how certain delays gave you time to notice what truly mattered. What you thought was uncertainty was often space. Space for awareness to grow before action. You're not trying to rush past that space anymore. Instead, you allow it to teach you patience. And patience changes how you carry decisions. They no longer feel like pressure to solve everything perfectly. They feel like opportunities to respond honestly. So when the next step appears, you won't need to force yourself into it. You'll recognize it, because it will feel consistent with what you've already learned. Stay attentive to that consistency. It is quietly shaping your direction. Now the feeling has become familiar. Not something you resist, but something you recognize. You understand that it doesn't demand immediate answers. It simply invites attention. You no longer need to search far ahead to know you are moving forward. The clarity you need is often present in the next honest moment. When you respond to that moment sincerely, the path feels steady, even if it is quiet. So you walk without forcing certainty. You allow direction to reveal itself gradually, step after step. And in doing so, the restlessness that once unsettled you becomes a reminder to remain aware. Stay with that awareness. It will continue guiding you gently, one clear step at a time. You may notice something changing now, not around you, within you. The urgency to figure everything out has softened. You don't feel the same pressure to force clarity. Instead, you're learning to stay present with what is already clear. You respond where you can, and release what you cannot control yet. That shift matters, because peace doesn't come from knowing every outcome. It comes from trusting the direction you're already walking in. You don't need to rush understanding anymore. You only need to remain attentive. And as you continue this way, confidence forms quietly, not in your ability to predict the future, but in your willingness to follow truth when you see it. Keep walking like this, calm, aware, responsive. The path becomes steadier the less you try to manage it yourself. You are beginning to notice how your perspective is widening. You're not only focused on the next step anymore, you're starting to recognize the distance you've already traveled. Not with pride, with gratitude. You remember how heavy everything once felt, how every choice seemed urgent, how silence felt uncertain instead of steady. Now, even when answers are incomplete, you're less unsettled. Because you're no longer measuring progress by speed. You're measuring it by alignment, by how quickly you return to honesty when you drift, by how naturally you pause before reacting, by how gently you handle what once overwhelmed you. That is growth. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. And this realization changes how you move forward. You don't fear setbacks the same way. You adjust instead of retreat. You listen instead of defend. Nothing about this has been wasted. Every moment of hesitation, every quiet decision, every time you chose truth when no one else saw, all of it has shaped you. So keep this perspective close. You are not who you were, and you don't need to rush who you are becoming. You're beginning to understand patience differently now, not as waiting without movement, but as remaining faithful while something forms beneath the surface. You no longer feel the need to force outcomes. You're learning how to stay present without demanding proof that progress is happening. Because you can sense it, this season isn't empty. It's preparing you. You're discovering how to stay steady without constant reassurance. How to keep choosing what's right, even when nothing outward confirms it yet. And that steadiness is changing you. Your reactions soften. Your expectations quiet. Your decisions slow down just enough to become intentional. You're realizing not every delay is a loss. Some pauses protect you from moving ahead before you're ready to carry what comes next. So you don't rush the timing anymore. You listen inside it. You notice where trust deepens, and where impatience still tries to take control. And instead of fighting the moment, you respond to it. Because patience is no longer passive to you. It's trust sustained over time. You're beginning to understand patience differently now. Not as waiting without movement, but as remaining faithful while something forms beneath the surface. You no longer feel the need to force outcomes. You're learning how to stay present without demanding proof that progress is happening. Because you can sense it, this season isn't empty. It's preparing you. You're discovering how to stay steady without constant reassurance. How to keep choosing what's right, even when nothing outward confirms it yet. And that steadiness is changing you. Your reactions soften, your expectations quiet, your decisions slow down just enough to become intentional. You're realizing not every delay is a loss. Some pauses protect you from moving ahead before you're ready to carry what comes next. So you don't rush the timing anymore. You listen inside it. You notice where trust deepens, and where impatience still tries to take control. And instead of fighting the moment, you respond to it. Because patience is no longer passive to you. It's trust sustained over time. Trust and hope are beginning to move together now, not as ideas, but as a way of living. You're no longer bracing for disappointment. You're no longer searching every moment for signs that something is wrong. You remain open without becoming anxious. And that changes how you respond to life. You notice what draws you closer to peace, and you lean toward it. You notice what unsettles your direction, and you release it quietly. There is less urgency now, less pressure to arrive somewhere quickly. You're learning that walking forward doesn't require constant effort, only willingness. You don't need every answer in advance. You don't need to predict what comes next. You just stay attentive and keep moving honestly. And in that posture, the path feels clearer, even when it's still unfolding. Faith is becoming part of ordinary life now. Not something separate, not something reserved for certain moments, but something woven quietly into how you live. You pause before reacting. You listen a little longer. You choose what aligns, even when no one notices. These small choices are shaping you. You're no longer trying to appear strong. You're learning to remain steady. Days may still feel simple, even routine, but they are no longer empty. Each one reinforces direction. Each one deepens trust. You're discovering that growth rarely feels dramatic. It feels consistent. And consistency is changing you. Slowly, faithfully. So you keep showing up. Not perfectly, just honestly. Because living this way no longer feels forced. It feels natural. Wholeness is starting to feel real now. Not perfect, not finished, but honest. You're no longer pulled in opposite directions inside yourself. What you believe and how you live are beginning to agree. And that agreement brings quiet peace. You don't question every decision the way you once did. You don't carry every mistake forward with you. You stay present where you are. That presence is changing your pace. You respond more than you react. You listen more than you assume. You move forward without dragging yesterday behind you. You're realizing you don't have to rush who you're becoming. You just keep walking, steadily, and that steadiness is enough. Life feels more unified now, not divided between who you are inside and who you appear to be outside, but consistent. Your choices come from the same place your trust comes from, and that brings strength. You don't have to over-explain yourself. You don't have to manage every impression. You simply move in the direction you know is true. Pressure still exists, but it no longer confuses you. You know why you're walking this way. Your pace has slowed, yet you're no longer worried about falling behind. Because direction matters more than speed, you remain steady. And in that steadiness, you feel ready for whatever comes next. The journey is beginning to feel purposeful, not because everything is finished, but because everything is aligned. You're no longer asking if you're doing enough. You're asking if you're staying true. And that keeps you grounded. You don't rush the future anymore. You stay present in the step you're standing in. You've realized something gentle but clear. Nothing along this path was wasted. Every pause taught patience. Every surrender built strength. Every quiet decision shaped direction. You're not at an ending. You're at readiness. Ready to keep moving without fear setting your pace. Ready to continue without needing certainty first. And that readiness feels calm, not heavy. You're simply walking where you're meant to walk. Now the path feels familiar, not predictable, but trusted. You don't need constant reassurance anymore. You've learned how to continue even when feelings shift. Some days feel clear, some days feel ordinary, but direction remains steady. You respond instead of rushing. You pause instead of assuming. You continue instead of turning back. You're no longer trying to hold on to a moment. You're living from what it changed in you. And that change is quiet. You carry it into conversations, into decisions, into small choices no one else notices. Step by step, it becomes part of who you are. So you keep walking, not because everything is certain, but because trust has become enough. Consistency is shaping you now. Not dramatic moments, not sudden changes, but steady choices repeated over time. You're learning that faith grows quietly. You keep returning to the same direction, even on ordinary days. You keep choosing what aligns, even when it feels small. And those small choices add weight in the right way. You don't need to feel inspired to continue. You just remain willing. Some days feel light, some feel heavy, but neither determines your direction anymore. You move forward anyway, because trust is no longer an emotion you wait for. It's a decision you practice, and practicing it has made you stronger than you expected. You're beginning to notice the difference now. Situations that once unsettled you, pause you instead. Reactions that once felt automatic slow down. You don't feel the need to control every outcome. You focus on staying aligned in the moment you're in. That awareness brings calm. You're not ignoring challenges. You're meeting them differently. Less resistance. More understanding. You're learning that peace doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from knowing how to respond when things don't. And because of that, your confidence feels quieter. Not loud certainty. Steady assurance. You're still learning, still growing, but you no longer feel lost while doing it. You're not rushing anymore. You've noticed how much lighter decisions feel when they don't come from pressure. You give yourself space to listen first, space to notice what feels steady and what feels forced, and that space changes your pace. You're not trying to solve everything today. You're simply choosing what aligns right now. Some answers arrive quickly, others unfold slowly. But you're no longer afraid of not knowing yet, because you've learned that clarity grows while you keep moving honestly. You don't need certainty to continue. You need direction, and direction has become clear enough to trust. You've started to notice something subtle. You recover faster now. Moments that once lingered in your mind for days pass more gently. You acknowledge them, learn from them, and keep walking. You don't hold on to every misstep. You don't question your entire direction because of one hard moment. You adjust and continue. That freedom feels new. You're realizing growth doesn't mean never struggling. It means not staying stuck. So when uncertainty appears, you meet it with patience instead of panic. And when peace returns, you recognize it instead of doubting it. You're becoming steady in ways you once hoped for. Not perfect, just grounded. You're beginning to trust your responses. Not because you have every answer, but because you know where you're choosing from. You pause before speaking. You consider before reacting. You allow quiet to guide you. That patience changes conversations. It changes decisions. You're no longer trying to control outcomes. You're focusing on staying honest in the moment. And honesty simplifies things. What once felt complicated now feels clearer. What once felt urgent now feels manageable. You still face uncertainty, but it doesn't carry the same weight. Because you're learning that clarity grows through faithful steps, not perfect plans. So you keep choosing carefully and moving forward gently. You're noticing the pace of your thoughts changing. They no longer race ahead trying to predict everything. They settle into the moment you're in. You allow questions to exist without demanding immediate answers. And that patience brings relief. You don't force conclusions anymore. You let understanding arrive in time. Some days still feel uncertain, but uncertainty no longer feels threatening. It feels temporary. You continue showing up, continuing small, faithful steps. And those steps keep building quiet confidence. Not because life is easier, but because you're no longer fighting every unknown. You're learning to let moments pass without holding them tightly. Not every feeling needs to be analyzed. Not every situation needs a reaction. Sometimes you simply notice and continue. That simplicity feels freeing. You're not carrying every thought forward anymore. You release what doesn't belong to the step you're in. Because of that, your attention feels clearer. You respond to what matters now, instead of replaying what already happened. And peace stays longer when you live this way. You're discovering that steadiness grows when you stop resisting the present moment. So you remain here, attentive, calm, willing, and the path keeps opening quietly ahead of you. You're becoming comfortable with quiet progress. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just steady movement. You don't need constant confirmation anymore. You notice direction through consistency. Days pass, and you keep choosing the same alignment. Not because you force it, but because it feels right to remain here. You've stopped measuring growth by intensity. You measure it by stability. And stability is strengthening you. You trust that small steps matter. You trust that time is working with you, not against you. So you continue, calmly, patiently, And that patience keeps your path clear. You're beginning to appreciate how far you've come, not by looking for big changes, but by noticing how you respond now. Situations that once overwhelmed you feel manageable. Questions that once troubled you feel lighter. You still care, but you don't carry everything. You allow space between what happens and how you answer it. And in that space, you choose calmly. You're realizing growth rarely announces itself. It appears in ordinary moments, handled differently than before. So you continue forward, aware but unhurried. Because steady change is lasting change. You're no longer searching for signs in every moment. You've begun to trust what you already understand. Instead of asking if you're on the right path, you focus on staying present in it. And that quiet confidence brings rest. You don't overanalyze every feeling. You don't question every step. You move with gentle awareness. Some days still surprise you, but they no longer unsettle you the same way. Because you know how to return to center. You pause, you listen, and you continue. That rhythm keeps you steady, and steadiness has become enough. You're learning to trust the quiet moments. Not every step needs affirmation. Not every day needs clarity. Sometimes you simply continue, and that is enough. You no longer feel the need to hurry understanding. You allow meaning to unfold gradually. And because of that, you feel less pressure. You accept that some things take time to reveal themselves. You stay patient while they do. Your confidence now comes from staying consistent, not from knowing every outcome. So you keep moving forward calmly, letting trust guide your pace. And peace follows that choice. You're noticing how steady your days feel now. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer expect perfection to move forward. You handle what comes, one moment at a time. You don't rush ahead trying to solve tomorrow. You stay with what today asks of you. That presence keeps you grounded. When uncertainty appears, you acknowledge it and keep going. When clarity appears, you accept it and keep going. Either way, your direction remains. You've learned that progress is not measured by speed, but by faithfulness to each step. And step by step, you're continuing without fear. You're becoming comfortable not knowing everything. There was a time you needed answers before moving. Now you move, and answers come in time. That shift feels gentle. You don't resist uncertainty the way you once did. You allow it to exist without losing direction. Because direction no longer depends on certainty. It depends on trust. So when questions appear, you let them slow you, not stop you. You remain attentive to what is clear now, and that is enough to continue. You've realized you don't have to see the whole path to walk the part already in front of you. You're learning to let each day stand on its own. You don't carry yesterday forward the way you used to. You don't borrow worry from tomorrow. You stay here, present. That presence lightens your thoughts. You notice what matters now, and release what doesn't belong to this moment. Some things still challenge you, but they no longer define your direction. You meet them calmly, and continue steadily. You're discovering that peace isn't found in perfect conditions. It's found in consistent trust. So you keep choosing the next honest step, and letting the rest unfold in time. You've stopped trying to control the pace. You allow progress to come naturally, without forcing it. Some days feel slow, but they no longer feel wasted. You understand now that quiet days still shape direction. You keep showing up, even when nothing feels remarkable. And that consistency strengthens you. You no longer measure growth by how much changes at once. You notice how steadily you remain. Because remaining is movement too. So you continue, calmly, faithfully. And that calm becomes your confidence. You're beginning to recognize stability in yourself. Not because everything around you stays the same, but because your response does. You meet change without losing direction. You meet uncertainty without losing balance. That steadiness feels new. You don't rush to fix every discomfort. You allow moments to settle before reacting. And in that pause, you choose carefully. You've learned that clarity often appears after patience. So you remain patient. And patience keeps your path steady. You're noticing how naturally you return to center now. Even when something unsettles you, you don't stay there long. You pause, breathe, and realign. That habit has become familiar. You no longer depend on perfect circumstances to feel steady. You carry steadiness with you. So challenges feel temporary instead of overwhelming. You face them, adjust, and continue. Because you trust the direction more than the moment. And that trust keeps you grounded. You're no longer trying to hold everything together. You allow things to unfold without gripping them tightly. That release feels. You focus on what you can do now and let the rest arrive in time. You don't push away uncertainty, but you don't follow it either. You stay with what is clear, and clarity keeps your steps simple. You move forward without forcing confidence. Confidence grows as you continue, so you keep going, quietly, steadily, and steady has become strong. You're beginning to feel settled in this way of moving, not rushed, not hesitant, simply steady. You trust the rhythm you've learned. When questions arise, you listen. When clarity comes, you follow. You don't need to hurry conclusions anymore. You understand now that direction is kept by returning again and again to what you know is true. And each return feels easier, because this path is no longer unfamiliar. It has become part of how you live. You've arrived at a quiet understanding. Nothing dramatic changed all at once, yet everything gradually became clearer. You didn't force certainty, you allowed direction. Step by step, choice by choice, you kept responding honestly. And through that, steadiness formed. You now know you don't need perfect clarity to move forward. You only need willingness. So you continue from here, calm, attentive, grounded, not trying to control every outcome, just staying aligned with what you already recognize. And that is enough for the next step.